Grassroots, are we ready to go live? I know you always are. Pam, are we ready to go live?
I believe so.
He's the one who's,
I've hit record and I'm not getting my lights. Oh, because I don't have my microphones plugged in.
See, that's why I like to start
I
early.
think we're live. I think we're live.
We are live.
We're live right now.
Now,
Hang in there.
now we're getting sounds.
We will be with you shortly.
We are good to go, ma'am.
Auden, you got anything you want to say while we're live and not really hooked up with Pam yet?
No, I got stuff to say, but I'm gonna wait for on record.
All right. Okay, we are calling this meeting to order at 6:02. Pam, could we request a roll call?
You betcha. Let's start with Jennifer Riffle.
Present.
Jackie Whitsitt.
Here.
Bill Infante.
Here?
Auden Schindler.
Here?
Katie Schwerer is absent. Gary Tenenbaum is here. He's not in the room. And Ryan Slack.
Here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Grassroots, for always being here at our side, recording our meetings, and they are also played after the fact at grassrootstv.org. Our videographer is the lovely Ryan O'Donnell, one of many Ryans in the room. The mayor's coffee is tomorrow morning from 8 to 8:30 at CC's Cafe across the street from Town Hall. Hi, Gary. So let me just say this one thing.
Yeah, of course. Basalt is an inclusive, sustainable mountain community that boasts both historic charm and progressive vision. It is an engaging place to live, work, and play while offering an abundance of creative, professional, educational, and recreational outlets.
Regulation or
Whatever it
I
takes.
like that too. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, this consent agenda looks like it's got a couple of sets of minutes on it. Is there any questions or is there a motion?
Mayor, I move the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. That was easy. Our next item is public comments. I don't really see anyone. Is there anyone? Watkins, did you have any public comment? Okay, we'll just let that go. Right. Mayor and council reports and comments. Councilors, do you have anything to report? Auden?
Yes. Well, I have a topic I want to bring up. We got that letter you all saw from the school district, representative of the school district on vaping, and we all know vaping is exploding. It's bad, not just on nicotine, there's other bad stuff. You've read the news and so forth. So they're asking that we pass more regulations, and they have a list of 4 different things. It includes a ban on flavored vape, increase the age of purchase for tobacco, a couple other things.
Increase it
From 18 to 21, or is it our? It is 21? Okay, check.
check.
We should do it. And I was at a Picken County meeting the other day, and they are passing or floating a ban on flavored vaping stuff. So at the very least, we should do this. We should do it as soon as possible. I don't know if we can do it in the next election, or whether we.
I think that's just by ordinance.
I think it is. I
And
think
do it by
once you
ordinance?
pass the main.
So if council agrees, I think we should direct staff to get moving on this. This is becoming a real problem at the schools.
Yes, Gary?
I just wanted to add to that, what we should do is also work with Eagle County to get them to ban it. And because at least over on this side, because then it would be, at least then we can work, at least all the stores and everybody else who has the product can get rid of it and not reorder, and they know it's coming. And so, but if we can get Eagle County to do it too, it would be a bigger hit, because then we can't go over to the Shell station on the other side or somewhere else, so, anyway.
Isn't that what their plan?
I don't know if, I'm not sure, because I know they're floating a question to tax it. And then I don't know if they were following with increasing the age and.
Can you check on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe we can chat about this in.
It'd be good to do it, if they're gonna do it, it'd be great to do it all at once.
Jennifer?
And then the same thing on that, if we are looking at doing this, if you can report back to us what municipalities are and are not, because I believe Carbondale decided not to go against the flavoring, but they are going to tax. And so, if we can start a domino effect.
Carbondale did.
Carbondale increased the age, I think they're not doing they're not asking a tax question,
Okay,
I think. And then,
But
Eagle
the-
County is, and Garfield County is not doing anything, I don't think.
right.
But then, Pitkin County is floating the question, and then Aspen is re-asking their question.
Cool.
So,
Yeah.
and I think they're doing the,
They already banned flavored.
Brian,
Next.
do you have anything?
Jackie.
No, the only thing I have is,
You're a winner.
winter. The program at Rudi, the ANS inspections, is, I think when we see the final number, it's gonna be, yeah, like 20 times last year, so.
Hmm.
The program's working. We're protecting Rudi. There's a great team up there, so
You're having fun.
good
aren't
money,
you?
good money spent, yeah.
Thank you,
Seriously.
thank you. Bill Infante?
I received the same letter everyone did, so I guess I'm gonna look to you guys to set a time to discuss this. This is the matter of the, yet another legal case being brought against the town, which I have to confess, I find extremely troubling, and I find it extraordinary after this pattern of lawsuits that we have had, that we are now gripped in another lawsuit as a result of our inability to exercise discretion.
If I may, the town, there's not an additional lawsuit, but also the notice that we received, we'll be reviewing and we can discuss in executive session.
I look forward to that. I think we should probably set that as soon as possible, because this is, again, distressing.
Yes, sir. Me? Usually I'm loud. Okay, how's that? Better? Right. Okay, I don't have anything to add. Said it's been a beautiful week. Got some rain, but not enough to make matters worse. And I guess one thing I've been thinking about is that, and I say it sometimes, and other people say it too, but we have a fabulous staff that carries the load of 3 times the work of what this many people should be able to do every day of the week, and we are lucky to have all of you.
thank you. Here, here.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
I always like to do gratitude, and I'd like to put my gratitude out to the weather forecasters and bringing awareness of putting out flash flood warnings and continuing to invite awareness to our citizens to protect their properties and be ready.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Couple,
manager.
yeah, sure, couple quick
Brian?
follow-up things. At the last meeting, Gary, you had asked about the CPW letter and whether,
Yes.
when we sent that, we heard back from them, we hadn't, to date. Auden and I attended their meeting in Rifle on
Thank you, Auden.
Friday, the
Thank you,
commissioners'
Auden.
meeting.
Big
Thank you,
left,
Auden.
big left.
You know, I think it was good to go over there, get to see them in person again, and we did get a clarification today. They had said at the meeting they didn't receive the letter, so I resent it to them, and then the what I believe the position is secretary to the commission did mention that they had in fact received my first letter, so we know that they've hopefully reviewed it, and we'll just, you know, stick on them. I did follow up with Matt Yamashita today to see if there were any decisions made with regard to our letter, and he said that the signage, like the language, they're working on that, and then the hours, no final decision has been made on the hours to the range, or like the stage 2 fire restrictions. But the process for that is that they'll review it locally, send it up regionally, which is JT Romansky, and then he makes a recommendation to the commission, because those 2 things are actual rule change type things. So our presence at those commission meetings, I think, is pretty important when
It's hard to get there.
Well, and they switch all over the state. So we got lucky, you know, we had one pretty close by. It wasn't a huge commitment, so we were able to get in front of them. But
Do they give their meeting schedule way in advance so that we could like make a better try at clearing our schedules for those who are working hard at real jobs?
Turns out, yes. So when we were there, we actually sat through them talking about when they wanted to set their schedules and stuff. So I think they do it. It looked like a year in advance, so we could get that info. So, and then just wanted to report. I sent out an email to you all today, but in case you didn't see it, the additional project that we had been working on up at the Cedar Pinion drainage. On Monday afternoon, I got word that we had approval through the state engineer on that, and went up today, and the contractor was mobilized up there. So they're starting work, starting some saw cutting. It's going to be pretty chaotic there for a while. They will have flaggers out, but it's a three-way intersection, and there's plenty of people, just as I was standing there, that are, you know, heading off on to Cedar outside of the town limits. You know, I think there's a lot more homes back there than one expects. But at any rate, they're getting started, so we'll keep moving on that. And yeah.
And I'm so grateful they are aware of the peach tree there, and I stopped by with my smiling face.
Oh, you did?
I did,
I told
yes.
our guys,
Okay.
careful of that peach tree.
They already
Great.
trimmed it.
Well, yes, that
There's a lot of
was,
dead.
it was already a
Oh,
dead branch,
it's
but,
Yeah.
but it won't be
wasn't
uprooted, and, if there is any relocation that's necessary, they know to contact you.
Okay.
Feel free to bring a proclamation about the peach tree to the next meeting.
It's a pretty great
I
peach
adore
tree.
that tree.
It is.
Did you finish?
I think so.
Okay, not to go backwards, but I was gonna ask, Will Tour was here from the mayor's office, and I just wondered if you wanted to recap anything that is happening at the state level on climate and,
From the governor's office.
I mean, yes.
So Will Torr, who's the head of the governor's energy office, was here and met with a bunch of really engaged people in the community on whatever it was,
day.
Wednesday night. And then the next morning had a smaller but still pretty big meeting with Pickens County commissioners, elected officials in Aspen. Jackie was there, I was there. And,
I'm just fodder.
oh, Gary was there.
Awesome.
Other people, Gary. Anyway, it was super positive.
You
A
fall
lot
under the
of-
category of.
There's a lot of will in this whole community, elected officials, to do stuff on climate. Will pointed out that 15 climate and energy bills have passed this year in the state, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. So pretty exciting, and it's not the last we'll see of the governor's energy office, who can help us do stuff like if we said, well, let's look at, you know, electrification of buildings. Let's look at the feasibility and cost and questions like that. So there's a resource there for us.
Okay, thank you. All right, our first action item is public hearing and the selection of 2020 beneficiary of Roaring Fork Charity Classic, and this must be Ryan and Watkins.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I was told we were going to have a representative of Response here, but it looks like they're not here yet. But if they come in, I'll be sure to introduce them. So the Charity Classic is a charity golf tournament that's a requirement by it's required by the terms of the annexation, the Roaring Fork Club. And a beneficiary is selected every year by a selection committee. And the selection committee was made up for this past year by councilors Infante and Schindler, as well as myself, town manager Ryan Mahoney, and Jeff Hasley, who's the general manager of the Roaring Fork Club. And so there were some pretty good applications that came in last year, but we selected Response. And we understand that they had a good tournament this year. And they have requested to have the tournament again for 2020, for the tournament for next year. In the past, the town's had a policy where each beneficiary has a 2-year term And so responses requested it for 2020, even though when it was advertised for the tournament this year, it was only advertised for the 2019 tournament, and the motion that you all, the council, made was to make them the beneficiary only for this year. But they're requesting it, and so the selection committee got together again in August and recommended that they be awarded the tournament in 2020 again, and also made the recommendation that we reinstate that policy that beneficiaries are the beneficiary for a 2-year period, as long as they show that they did a good job with the with hosting the tournament. With that, that's about all I have to say, but I'm happy to take questions. And so this is a public hearing, by the way, and the outcome would be to give response, make them the beneficiary again for 2020 or some other direction.
Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and open the public hearing, because that's technically what we have to do. It's 6:17. Seeing and hearing no comments, I'll close the public hearing and go to council for questions, motions. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question of what has occurred with the 3 events at the Roaring Fork Club. How did that shake out? Could you give us an update on it, please?
Well, one event we know for a long time has been the Taste of Basalt, which benefits the Basalt Education Foundation. The Charity Classic is the second event, and the third event has not been taking place, but there was some discussion, including when the selection committee met, of kind of like throwing our ideas around for what it would be like, but no decision was made yet. We're kind of waiting for some other events to play out before we make a decision, but there was some discussion of whether it could be some event that results in a community chest. That idea was discussed, but there's been no decision on the third event.
Okay. Can you jog my memory on what the proposed, there was an organization that came to us. It was Habitat.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
got it.
But they weren't able to arrange that in time, I think, with the Roaring Fork Club last year. And they were redoing their course, or there was some conflict, so.
Okay, cool.
But they have not been back this year.
Okay, thanks for the update.
You're welcome. That's all I know.
Bill?
Just to, as a point too, the third event is not a golf classic, it's another event somewhere else, and Habitat, if I recall correctly, wasn't able to organize something other than a golf classic last year, and Response had already, been awarded the second. The only thing that I'd like to ask, I thought last year when we had selected Response that they're doing some really great work to protect victims of domestic violence. The education program, which is what certainly swayed me in the schools, I think is very well targeted and extremely timely. The only thing I'd ask is for a little bit of a readout on kind of what they do with the money. I mean, they told us that they raised $35,000, all well and good, congratulations, but programmatically, I would certainly be interested in the results that they are delivering. How do they monitor their effect and their impact? And by providing that to us, we can serve as their greater advocates. So I would argue it's in their own interest to get us more information, but at very least, I'd like to ask for an annual report or some kind of program report that explains what they did, why it's important, and what they're going to do in the future.
Maybe that could be part of the template for the report they give us every year.
That would be fabulous.
And along those same lines, it would be great to hear what the Education Foundation does, because they go great guns and have for years on this thing, and I don't remember, so may as well be consistent. It's my middle name here. Did we get a motion on this guy?
Mayor, I move the town council approve Response as the Roaring Fork Charity Classic recipient for 2020.
Second?
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, next one is first reading of Ordinance 19, an ordinance of the town approving a license and indemnity agreement for the installation and maintenance of electric vehicle charging stations in the Gisela, is that right? Gisela? Gisela Way, right away. I didn't know what you were trying to say. To the Basalt Regional Library. I knew a German woman named Gisela. Susan.
Actually, James has this one, so.
No, I'm just yelling at you for making fun of me. Yes, James.
Thank you.
Gisela, let's talk about Gisela.
And Kathy Click was going to be here, but I think we're running a couple minutes ahead of time, so I guess we can go ahead and go. This is first reading of an ordinance that would approve of a license and indemnity agreement for the Basalt Regional Library to install, why don't you come on?
Speak of the devil.
To install 3 electric car charging stations in the Gisela Way, right-of-way on the south side of the library, as you can see in this location. There is some conduit that's already in place that was put in with the original library construction for this purpose, and it would be to charge up to 6 vehicles at one time. The license agreement that you have attached to your ordinance indemnifies the town against any liability claims that could arise out of the installation or use of the charging stations. It requires that all signage associated with the charging stations get town approval, and the town attorney has reviewed it and indicated that it's acceptable. Staff believes that the request to be consistent with the environmental goals and the strategic framework the town has. And we'd recommend taking any comments that Kathy has on the agreement or the project, and then taking public comments and providing council discussion. Ultimately, staff recommends approving the ordinance on first reading and setting the second reading for September 24th.
James, I think if it's okay, I think that we would take public comment at the second reading. Is that normal?
Either way.
It doesn't say public comment, it usually says it on second. But anyway, Kathy, what do you got?
We have to have 2 public
We are, we're a silver LEED certified building at the library. And it's been a long-term goal of ours to have that EV charging unit, those EV charging units over there. It seems like a good time. We are applying for the Charge Ahead Colorado grants, which the town has also received. We have spoken with Jim Rio, who is the guy who did the work over here. He's efficient, he knows what he's doing, and we feel confident that even if we don't get the grant in this funding cycle, we would reapply for it, so that we would actually bring this whole sustainability project sort of to a close at the library. We're centrally located, we have people who are there for a couple of hours, so it's an easy charge-up place for them. It fits with our mission, and it fits with the town's mission. So I appreciate you looking at this and reviewing it, and hope that we will have your support.
I'm sure it won't be a big problem. Auden?
So this is great, I fully support it. The one thing I would say is that the town has a ton right now of level 2 chargers, and ideally we'd have more fast chargers. And the fast chargers, I think we're gonna find, are the thing people are looking for. If you charge for a couple hours, you don't get much charge. So my question is the grid set up there that you can do it? Because it may not be.
I'll have to check on that.
I would ask for us to explore that. If it is a possibility, it's gonna cost more, and possibly the town can participate in that added cost. There's other money coming into the state now with the VW deal. We can help find money. So I would urge a fast charger on it. And then on you guys, you're looking at 6 dual level 2s.
One being an ADA spot, so I don't know if we would get 5 total or 6 actual chargers, but we could certainly take the one that's closest to the island and make that a fast charging station, which would be 2 fast charging.
That'd be awesome. And then the other point is, if that building's LEED silver, we should get the plaque. Is there a plaque? It's on the building? Where is it?
It's inside the lobby.
Never mind.
Where did you want it on?
We're on it.
I-
The library people are on things that you
Good
can
work,
read.
good work. Okay.
Anyone else have questions for either staff or Kathy? Bill?
I just had kind of a question. I guess it relates to the charging stations at the library, but also to the charging stations that we have, which, by the way, I applaud. I think this is great. Thank you for advancing this great step. But who collects the revenue, and how are the revenues managed? Is the library going to collect revenue from those who charge, and what do they do with it? And what do we do with our charging stations?
Well, the town currently doesn't charge for electricity. We've kind of talked about potentially looking at charging here soon with our new station. The library, I don't know, are you proposing to charge any fees?
We would have, we're anticipating having a 2-hour free charging The people who generally tend to spend all day at the library aren't driving there. But there would be maybe we would have an incremental charge after 2 hours for up to 1 hour. You could activate those chargers by your credit card, so if you went over, it would automatically charge. But we would use the nominal fees for that to offset the electric charge, and we also have solar on our roof. So, we're exploring how much of that can offset the use of those EV stations.
Okay.
So we would keep it for utilities, basically.
Got it. I don't want to extend this, but I am kind of interested in the dimensions of our issue. Because it costs somebody something to provide this electricity, and giving it to the community for free is a wonderful thing, but we should probably quantify that and salute it.
Yeah.
And one approach could be, these charge point chargers, you can just change them. So after a year of people getting used to it and getting free, then we can start charging.
Yeah.
And that seems fine, down the line. If it starts getting used all the time, let's charge.
Yeah.
In the library agreement that we have in the packet, basically it indicates that the library can charge a fee to kind of recoup their costs of the electricity through that agreement.
And also, not to extend it, but everything at the library is free. So we wouldn't be charging $20 an hour to charge your electric vehicle. It would be just a very nominal maintenance kind of fee, yeah.
Kind of thing. Anyone else? Or is there a motion?
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 19, series of 2019 on first reading and set public hearing and second reading to September 24th, 2019.
Second.
Yes.
Oh, when Councilor Infante asked about our charging policy, we have that on our list of things to do. We have to check in with our grant, the grant that we received. And so what we've been talking to the green team about is what charge would be appropriate, and when we can put it in place is kind of dependent on the specifics on our grant. So we do have that, and we have it in the budget, that additional cost. Right now, we have it allocated to the green team budget as additional cost for electricity. So we're kind of envisioning that maybe mid-year is when we would kick in the cost. And again, it would just be to accommodate the increase in the cost of electricity.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks Kathy.
Thank you,
Good to
Kathy.
see you. Thanks James.
Nice to see you too. See you later.
Okay, first reading of ordinance 20, an ordinance of the town council designating off-leash areas for dogs. Ryan and Greg.
Yeah, so we've got a couple maps I think James is going to throw up on the
He's
screen
going-
for us.
On the screen.
Going to put up on the screen, how about that?
Whatever.
And I'll go ahead and kick it off, and I think Chief Knott can chime in as well. But as you recall, we recently passed an ordinance, which was ordinance number 14, that amended our municipal code, basically contemplating that council can designate areas for off-leash. And so this is the following step of that, bringing back those areas via ordinance. We have run this through the Post Committee as well as CPW, and we have proposed 4 places right now. And those places, if you can check out the screen over there, sort of balanced them throughout town as best we could. One is in Linear Park, just north of Meadow Drive, kind of near Willits Town Center there. The second area is at the Confluence Park, which is just down here at the confluence of the Frying Pan and the Roaring Fork. There's a nice eddy that forms there, and you see dogs playing down there quite a bit, so a nice safe place for dogs. The third spot was on the south side at the Southside Park. A pretty big area, and we heard from one previous citizen that he does, that it's a pretty frequently used place for dogs now, so I think that's sort of a good congregation point. And then lastly, we identified Albany Park and sort of the west side of Albany Park, trying to keep a nice balance between the kid area and the area where we have the place, the picnic shelter, and then of course where you can have off-leash area. So those were the four. I know we did hear some suggestions at the last meeting for other ones. We hesitate on opening the floodgates with too many locations now, because we just feel like once you do that, it's really hard to reel those back in. You know, I think a few questions that came up were like the rugby fields, the river park, and Ponderosa Park down along the Roaring Fork. And those places, the river park, our thoughts there were that that's going to be a developing area. We're doing more infrastructure on both the town side and perhaps on the private side. And when that builds up, you know, kind of taking that liberty away would be probably pretty difficult. Yet we'd have a lot more people down there and perhaps create some issues. Also, it's kind of along a riparian area, and that was one of the recommendations of CPW, is just to be cautious about the riparian areas and having the sort of wild animal and domesticated animal interface. And then as it relates to Ponderosa Park, you know, it's pretty densely wooded in there, and so it's pretty easy to lose sight of a dog, or for them to not be within earshot, especially when the water's up. So we had some concerns about that. And then lastly, the rugby field. So the rugby field gets used pretty regularly by sports teams, and has always been off limits to dogs. It is today. While you'll see some dogs out there sometimes, we didn't feel like opening that would be a good option for us. So we did run all of that by, as I said, Post and CPW, and you know, had a similar recommendation from them. Chief, did you have anything to add to that?
Not to them.
Okay. We did also include here, which we had not the last time, some research that Councilor Riffle had asked us to provide, which were what are the dog bites from the other jurisdictions around the valley. So we did provide that in here for you.
I deal with this issue all the time, and looking at most of the areas you picked, there are good blocks to give good guidance to our law enforcement. Albany is going to be a disaster to try to enforce that. I mean, that's just, you put a line in the middle of the field, that I think that's just asking for just a disaster, because you know, you're not going to enforce it, so people are going to still use the whole field. So why do that? Why create this half-field thing when you really are trying to keep them away from the play area? And that's where you can really say, that's it, the dogs don't go in there. And then you can put it to, like, you always want to put it to some, like, demarcation of, like a trail or a road or a parking area or a play area. It just makes it much easier, because when Greg gets called in by a citizen who now knows there's a dog leash law, he's not gonna sit there and try to, oh, you in it, you at it? I mean, because this is what happened once you create regulation. This is what's gonna happen, because people are good. You're gonna have people who know about the regulations, and they'll call you in and they'll do it. It might not be tomorrow, but it'll happen, and it's just like, let's just clear that up now. Because the other ones you picked have clear demarcation. And, you know, the half of Linear Park is perfect, because Meadow Drive is right there. This one is a tough one. And the only other thing I had was, are you really gonna start to enforce the River Park after this? that's just a question for you guys to, because we're gonna hear it as soon as you do, if you're gonna plan on doing it, if you're not gonna make it, okay, because our laissez-faire seems to be ending, which is okay, I'm totally in agreement with it, because, I mean, I got it, today from somebody who got bit, and, you know, it's, or not bit, but just jumped on, and it's just, people don't love it, and so, I think if this gets out and people start hearing about it, they'll call you more, and I just wanna know what the enforcement strategy is.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the enforcement strategy is going to be a period of at least 2 months, maybe 3 months of just education, warnings, getting the signs posted for marking these areas so that we can refer to those, tell people that these are the off-leash, these are the on-leash, and go through a lengthy education period where we're just having those conversations, explaining the why, explaining what the goal is, and how moving forward, you know, after we stop with the warning and start enforcement of what that will be. And, you know, after that, I think we're in a great time of year, going into fall, into early winter, where we can do a lot of education and people are out. And then, you know, go into the winter months and start doing enforcement.
And Chief Knott, what do you think about the other issue regarding the Albany Park
So Albany's a
unseen
tough one, as
division?
Gary says. You know, some of the ideas that we spoke about is the picnic area, the gazebo. There's that trail that runs to, as you're looking at the picture, towards Albany Park. That could be that delineator, is that trail. So the playground, that trail, everything to the, above that, I guess, would be off-leash. People, you know, I don't know if you want an off-leash area with a big picnic area, with the number of events that we have at Albany Park that utilize that structure. So that trail that goes just to the left of it, that could be that delineator that you were speaking of.
Yeah, I just think, you just need to have a clear delineation, so you don't get into half the field. What is the half the field?
Totally agree.
And honestly, the signage should be, you know, obvious, but like here, you're not gonna put a sign in the middle of the field saying.
And that was our attempt, and great feedback for how you're looking at that, and I think it makes total sense.
Other council,
A little bit of feedback on Albany Park. It would be, from the dog owner perspective, easier to say no dogs in the gravel. So that prevents dogs from in the playground area. And it is a known community, and our numbers show it, of how few human-dog issues we have. Is there's a lot of responsible dog owners in Basalt. And we communicate with each other of, hey, there's a birthday party at the gazebo. And we all communicate with each other, and so we'll go somewhere else. Or we keep the dogs leashed until we get to the field, and there is that effort of community policing. And so it seems clearest at Albany of no dogs in the gravel.
are you agreeing with what Gary's saying then, or
She
something
wants to
else?
include the gazebo area. I understand what you're trying to do, because
Yeah.
the dog did pee in my cooler once, so I was kind of bummed about that. Even though I own a dog and I walk it off leash in Albany, having the gazebo area be kind of those areas where you don't heavily enforce, but kind of like if you have an event there, you can enforce. I was okay with that, because when somebody's having an event, especially a kid event, any dogs that run in definitely affect that event. So
Mhm.
that was the only reason why I liked Chief Knott's idea for that, with the knowledge that if a dog randomly goes in there, he's not gonna be there going, "Bah."
Right. Other
I definitely
council,
agree with the gravel.
other councilors weighing in on where? Okay,
I do.
I tend to agree with, you know, what's being said. It sounds like it's similar. What's being suggested is sounding the same to me. Did you have something, Ryan?
No, I was
Oh,
gonna
okay.
make a motion.
Okay, are you clear on,
Yeah, I think setting that delineal line and your addition of the gravel looks perfect.
okay,
So if we're coming back for next second reading, we can amend this map of Albany to show what I believe we're hearing.
okay, great.
Can I just add one other thing? Just a clarification that we showed a real nice line on the linear part, and we're going to tweak the language on that one too, because there is a trail that's kind of running through the middle here, and we're not going to, the language here would exclude that as a dog permitted off-leash area, and so we're only going to exclude the trail that runs along the East Valley Road, and not the trail that's in the middle of that area, as it's exactly as shown here.
All right. So it's
tweak
just a
the-
clarification, not really a change?
Yeah.
That we'll see on the next reading? Okay, are we ready for your motion?
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 20, series of 2019, with the small changes brought by Susan and Gary.
And Jen.
Except, and, what, oh, and Jackie?
And Jen.
Oh, and Jen, yeah. The RV park and linear park. And set the public hearing and second reading for September 24th, 2019.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, good discussion, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Public hearing, first reading of ordinance number 21, and an ordinance of the town granting final site plan approval for the construction and operation of the Arts Campus at Willits on the Town Park Arts Center tract parcel located in Willits Town Center. Sarah?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Pardon me one moment.
This is gonna take 1 second while we set up, obviously.
Yeah. We're gonna need 1 second.
Such a community that goes up.
I know, that's what I wanted. I understand.
Excellent.
Say it's off leash and then take it.
Joey.
Yes, Jack.
How are you, Mr. Edwards?
Good, how are you?
Is that your dad?
Or my grandfather.
Love it to be able to share.
Are we ready? Are we ready to give these guys our undivided?
Undivided.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, great, thank you.
They can have a couple applicant members up at the table.
And I can rotate out as needed, whoever would like to.
I'll join you up
maybe
here
come up
and
and sit next to me, okay?
We can
So
tag out.
I'm Sarah Gully with the Town's Planning Department, and we
Ryan
have
Honey?
Ryan Honey here
He needs to
representing the
call.
project with a team of folks. So let them introduce themselves as they come up. Give you a little background on this. This is first reading of ordinance 21, 2019, which is the final site plan for the Arts Campus at Willits. So the Town Council previously saw the sketch plan in 2018, and since that time, there has been some significant changes made to the site plan that we're gonna revisit today, or visit today rather. Just to reorient you with the location of the site for anyone who may not know where it is or who's watching, we are talking about this parcel here at the end of Willits Town Center. It's going to be surrounded on each side. We'll have Lewis Lane going through to the south, Robinson Street will be to the east, Market Street up to the north, and Pioneer Street will continue over here to the west. And so those streets will be constructed as part of agreements made with adjacent parcels. So here's what you saw at the sketch site plan, and it was approved by council at that time with conditions, also on the wall up here, however's easiest for you to take a look at. And so we've had some changes since that time, and this is what's being proposed today. The changes to the site plan include a reduction in size. It was previously proposed at 19,000 square feet, and the applicant is now proposing a 10,000 square foot building. The building has changed, shifted its position on the site, and that was a response to the P&Z's direction to create a greater civic presence for the building. So the building's been shifted to the north, with its entry canopy extending to the right-of-way of Market and Robinson Streets up here towards the top of the site. The southern half of the site, which I'll show in this colored rendering the applicant provided, is been reserved as a passive lawn area. This is intended for phase 2 of future development. The applicant is proposing to fence this area. It does have an ADA accessible trail leading to the bottom, but it will be fenced, so it's not intended for public use. Other changes worth mentioning here, the applicant has eliminated the potential basement that was discussed at the sketch plan. They've removed the stairway overhang that overhung the right-of-way. They've relocated the loading zone along Pioneer Street such that, let's see, it's right here, such that it's adjacent to the curb in the building as well as the trash recycling room right there. They have added the required amount of bike parking to the site in this iteration, and as well as they've included the ADA family restroom. And there's been some internal reconfiguration that the applicant might want to discuss, and this is, due to adjusting the design to a smaller building. So this application was reviewed by the P&Z at their September 3rd meeting, and the P&Z was overall very supportive of the application with staff's proposed conditions. The P&Z did make a motion to include passing along comments to council, their comments to council, so that has been included in the packet. And if you've read that, there's 3 items, discussion items that you'll notice rose to the top. The first is the P&Z desires for the applicant to create an energy efficient green building such as a net zero development or something like that. Overall, they did like the architecture, but one request was made to continue to study the design to really nail home that, promote that civic presence. And they also had some discussion about that southern lawn area that's reserved for phase 2. The P&Z desired to have council revisit the open space after a period of 10 years. So staff has submitted a suggested edit to this condition. This is condition number 15 of Exhibit A, and that was handed out to you today. This would be that rather lengthy paragraph. I'm gonna summarize what you'd be seeing here. It's not a vast departure from what is in the packet today, but it does have some edits. So basically, the town does desire to use this space as a performing arts center. There's, that's definitely the intent. This states that any time after 10 years from the issuance of the certificate of occupancy, if the applicant at that time does not have a site plan going for phase 2, then council, you may evaluate the area and allow improvements as you see fit. Improvements could include turning this into, more of a public park, might be removing that fencing. And this would all be created at the town's expense, those improvements. But during that time, TACOS still can make an application for phase 2. So we're not trying to preclude that use. We really do want to support the Performing Arts Center, but really want to kind of strike the balance of this is, a public space and how should it be used? So that'd be at the council's discretion. Moving on to another topic would be uses. They define some primary uses for this building, which includes such things as the performing arts space, lectures, films, and educational classes. They've also defined some accessory uses, and this would be like the office space, the kitchen, workspaces, and retail. So, noting that retail commercial component, the commercial is capped within the PUD at 750 square feet for the TACOS site. And looking through the proposed uses, the applicant has suggested a cafe space when the building is open and there's no events taking place. So staff has looked at these accessory uses and actually had a bit of an edit, which you'll see on the second page of that handout. And these are edits to the permitted uses, Exhibit B under accessory uses. So the changes that we are proposing are highlighted in red and underlined. We talk about the retail space, which was proposed by the applicant, and that they might be wanting to have a retail space or a gift shop that sells, arts center branded items. And we've added that this could include an additional area for special events, such as, a booth or a table in the lobby that sells items just related to that specific event. You'll see that very commonly at concerts. An act will come through and they'll have their own personal, couple t-shirts for sale at a very small table. We're suggesting that would not count towards the retail space, that is pretty exclusive to that use for that one-time use or use of that day. But they are also proposing in their accessory use as a refreshment area. You know, the bar area could be used for, you know, cafe and other related uses. So that, the total area that's used as a small cafe when there's no other events scheduled would be limited to that 750 square feet. That would be also combined with, if Takao does decide to open a little, you know, gift shop area, we would suggest that those two areas be considered and capped at no more than 750 square feet to be in compliance with the PUD. So, sorry, there's a couple last minute edits there, but we thought it was worth noting. Under that accessory uses, they do have another category that they refer to as special events, and this would be use of the building by people or organizations that aren't related to cause. Could be corporate retreats, weddings, parties, you know, events like that. So the applicant, within the application, the applicant has proposed up to 100 of these special events per year. And the applicant and staff have worked together on this to try to craft something we feel might be more in line with the mission. And so we're proposing the following. We propose that 2/3 of all of the events that take place at this building are primary use events. That there'd be no more than 50 out of the 100 proposed special events that would be limited to as private functions. So in other words, you could have a special event that was like a nonprofit that was holding a film festival, but the public, you know, is able to buy tickets to this, so that doesn't count towards that 50 private, you know, functions. We are suggesting that they report this annually to the town. And the town is also requesting the ability to use the space at Takao for meetings, you know, trainings, open houses, things like that, when available, at a reasonable cost, and this does not count towards those 100 special events. For this application, we did receive referrals from the fire department, engineering, Mid-Valley Metro District, WeCycle, and RAFTA. And we also received prior comments by the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and that was from sketch plan review. These comments have all been incorporated into the draft conditions in the resolution and, the ordinance, and the comments are also included in the packet. You know, other items worth mentioning, the staff has drafted a condition requiring an adequately sized trash, recycling, as well as compost containers to be located in the building. The applicant also must work with staff and the developers of the adjacent lots as appropriate to establish a coordinated construction management plan and administration of public improvement requirements and financial security. There's potential for a lot to be going on in that area all at once, and we want to make sure that that's well coordinated and well thought out. And staff is working with the applicant to create a parking monitoring and management plan prior to building permit. This is a carryover condition from sketch plan, but staff has altered that to be required prior to building permit rather than at final review. So I think that's all I want to bring up for the moment. This is a public hearing, so staff suggests hearing a presentation from the applicant and then opening it up for public comment and take any questions as well. Thank you.
Great. We will go quickly and make sure we just go through our presentation so we have plenty of time for discussion. I think Jeff is going to queue up some slides for me. I'm going to just talk really briefly about how we got here. I think most of you were patrons of the temporary, so thank you for doing that. And I think that was a demonstration of the success that we had and what this community is ready for and can bear. So thank you, Jeff. So here's just some successes from the temporary that indicate why we're ready for this building. We had over 25,000 patrons. We partnered with more than 38 local, regional, and national nonprofits. Partnerships and collaborations were a huge part of our programming model and will be that moving forward. We had consistent programming. We averaged 3.2 programs per week. That would be our baseline from the contemporary, moving up from there. We had a mix of film, lectures, comedy, music, kids programming, theater, community events, all kinds of things. More than 21% of our events featured or starred a minority artist, so we were committed to promoting diverse artists and engaging all parts of our community. We had more than 150 educational workshops or events, something we can do a lot more of in the new building because we only had one room at the temporary, so the new facility is really going to be conducive to more community program and educational programming. And then the economic impact. There's some real interesting data that just came out of Crested Butte. And based on that as a comparable, we think the activity at the temporary generated more than 1.3 million in spillover spending in and around our facility. And then we also know definitively that other nonprofits raised $250,000 at events at our facility to support their mission. So pretty big economic impact there. This is just a list of our nonprofit partners. I love this slide. We love partnering with people. We love the ability to bring people who have expertise in lots of fields and use culture to promote their missions. So this is a list of who we worked with, and that will obviously grow. And this is just a couple of slides that show this was our vision for programming, what we thought we could do, and then in red is what we were able to do at the temporary. You'll notice a couple holes, mainly in the culinary arts and the special events, and a little bit in the education side. Again, this was a result of the facility we had at the temporary. With no kitchen, we couldn't do culinary arts. With one room, we couldn't do very much educational programming because we had events going on that would conflict with requested events. And same thing with the special events. We had so many programs going on in our one room that it was difficult to have lots of special events. So we look forward to be able to fill in this circle or this graph completely. I think most of you guys know that the town came out in force and to support what we did, enjoyed what we did, and I think the community is ready for the contemporary. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Michael Lipkin, our board member, board vice president, as well as our pro bono architect on the project to walk us quickly through the building. Michael.
Great, thank you. So I think we all know where the building is. That's pretty well located, I think for all of us. I want to quickly go back to this slide, but this is phase one for us, and this is, as Sarah pointed out, the open space that represents future expansion for us. And I guess I need to point, but here is an overview of the building. What we see here is the entrance here. We also see a lot of activity on the roof. Those are solar collectors, and I might as well just address that one immediately because I know there's a lot of interest in the sustainability aspects. But we are working with RMI, Core, and Holy Cross on doing a smart energy building, but we're all very interested in it being a prototype for how to build a civic building and how to visibly express that, as well as for people to understand when they're in this building that it's really a very much not only a 21st century performing arts facility, but it is state-of-the-art thinking on how a community builds a sustainable building and how we can celebrate that every time people walk into that building. So we expect there's going to be some media that explains the energy smart aspects of this building. So here we are at the front door, and I'm going to take you around the building and show you some different views of the building with trees in front of it, without them. But we're looking at the front door here. We're looking at right here. This is basically behind here is a community building and offices, and we'll get another view here. Here's the plan, and I think this is a good way for us to start here. But we're looking at the front door, and right inside the front door is a community room that's about 650 square feet, a suite of offices, bathrooms, and then the main spaces are the entry takes you into the lobby cafe space, which connects to the Contemporary, which is our theater. It's about a third bigger than the Temporary. The Temporary was a great experience for us because we just generated a tremendous amount of data that has informed us about what to do now in this building, but it's also what led to us feeling we should start with just the smaller theater and not the bigger theater we looked at with you all when we were last in front of you. So this is our phase one kitchen here. There's an outdoor terrace on this side of the building overlooking the green space, and a few more images from the outside. This is looking from the corner of Market and Robinson, walking towards the entrance. Here's the same image without the trees. Staff had asked us to show it both ways. This is stepping back about 50 yards back, looking towards the building. We are back to the front door, also looking at the canopy that both covers the entrance, but also wraps around and covers a little bit of an outdoor space that could be used for small performances, used as just a place to go out and enjoy a cup of coffee or a cocktail. It'll overlook this space. The next image is around the corner, looking from the south towards that cafe and into the lobby area. We're going to come around the building. This is looking from the corner of Lewis Lane and Willets Lane, and then again the same image without trees. And we're back to the front door. I guess I should go back there for 1 second. One of the comments we had the last round from P&Z was, can we show a building? You know, this is meant to be a pretty straightforward, simple building. It's really about, in many ways, what happens inside, but the outside is certainly a statement. We were asked for the building to look a little more civic. We responded to that, I think, by creating this, bringing this canopy further out and making a bigger statement. It's a gold ceiling that extends into the space, so it will create, when lit, kind of a gold glow as you approach the building. I know it's pretty bright in here. The image on that wall is, of course, a good bit sharper, and you get a little more sense of what that gold canopy looks like. But, you know, we're certainly excited about what we're doing. This is a concrete canopy suspended structurally from these columns that move up through the space. So it's going to look, you know, like it's going to be exciting. You know, there's a lot going on. We're back in the building. I would want to just remind us, we come in through the front door looking into this cafe space that looks out onto this green area and, of course, feeds the Contemporary, but will also, the expansion with a large theater will go here, and this lobby and cafe and bar will serve this area as well. A couple pictures of what this looks like. When you're walking in the front door straight ahead of you, it's the cafe bar on this side. This space will be animated by a lot of video screens. We are a 21st century facility. We expect those screens will sometimes show what's going on inside the Contemporary, but at other times might be showing a circus from Beijing, or a climate change event going on in the Arctic, or a concert in South Africa. But we really want to be plugged into the world, because I think collaboration and awareness of what's going on in the world is, and critical thinking is what we're trying to bring to this institution. This is a look into the cafe space, get a sense of looking out from it. Another view from that cafe space looking out into the garden space. And we're going to take have a couple of images right now inside the Contemporary. I just want to say it seats about 270, which is about 30% bigger than the Temporary. It'll handle about 400 standing. The seats are flexible. It can be a cabaret layout, it can be a dance floor, or this more conventional layout for conventional seating. But here we are inside that space. It gives you a bit of a sense of scale. We're looking at some of the elements from the Temporary bleeding over into this space. Obviously, we're used to a lot of cheering and a lot of excitement going on at our events. We're back to this plan, and I want to point out that on this corner of the building, and I think it's part of the civic response as well, Market Street over here has been contemplated to be able to be closed off for special events, and we've created a park on this side of the building, which we hadn't had before, that can allow us to both bleed out into this space, but it creates a shaded green space on that side of the building that is really a gesture to the public and part of a statement about who and what we are as you approach the building. So I want to talk about one last thing here. What we've been talking about is this building, which is the Contemporary, but we are the Arts Campus of Willets. We really believe that the second phase and even a third phase are certainly an extraordinarily important opportunity for us. We know the second phase is likely to be this theater, but I think we should keep in mind, and that's about a 10,000 square foot piece. The next thing I'm going to show you is this corner filled in with a building that's about a 6,000 square foot building that could be 1, 2, even 3 stories within the height limits allowed at Willets. It could have a basement, but I can't tell you what this will be. The one thing we've often heard, though, is the Valley could use a digital arts center, a place where people develop those skills and perfect them and perform them. That's a good idea, but when you saw that list of nonprofits we had in a short period of time and other arts institutions, I don't think it'll be long before we're hearing about needs for these buildings. We just all have to keep in mind that there's just a tremendous opportunity here, but I think we know what this property has become worth over the years, and it's just such a unique opportunity. We should make sure we get all the art and culture we can on this parcel, and just keep that firmly in mind. That's where we want to go. It took an awful long time to get from here. This has been a conversation for over 20 years, but I think the next buildings will certainly come a good bit faster, and it's just a once in this town's lifetime opportunity to make these things happen, because I just don't know where the next piece of ground comes from. And that's about it.
Great, yeah, that's our presentation, so if you guys have questions, discussion, just let us know.
Okay, if the presentation parts are over, why don't we go ahead and, this is a public hearing, just open the public hearing at 7:05. Is there anyone here that wants to make a comment or on this application? Okay.
Sorry, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
Didn't move
Hearing
fast
none, we'll
enough.
close the public hearing and go to council for questions, thoughts, et cetera. Gary?
Overall, kind of excited. To finally see this happening. It's been a really long time coming, so I am really excited to see it. There's a couple kind of questions for you guys that I really would like to ponder. One is I know it's a future development area, but, you know, fencing it off with a 6-foot fence, you know, if there's a way to have, if people park behind it or they want to come through that area, you know, making sure that it's kind of, find a way to keep it open, but obviously not create a full park, because eventually it's going to be a building, hopefully sooner than later. Trying to do something more. You didn't really talk about what that private open space was going to look like. I see trees in there in the plans, but if you can give more of a, an explanation of, and maybe a rendering of what that could look like, and really being concerned, I'm concerned about the fence and what that represents, because in your plans it says 6 feet, and it's, I mean, unless you're proposing it to be really hazardous, I don't understand why we're trying to keep people so far out of it that it has to be 6 feet tall.
I think there's two things, if I can chime in. The first is, whatever we do, I want to assure everyone it's going to be tasteful and appropriate and done at the caliber that our donors and my board would expect to be at. It's going to be a beautiful looking parcel, every inch of it. So just know that piece of it. And then on the need to have the backyard be sort of semi-private, we want the opportunity to explore what could happen there and what is the right thing to do there. And we feel like we've created we are confident the public space in front, and it's the public park, as well as the plaza area and the outside seating. We view that as a gathering place for the public where people can come and be creative and build community. But we, much in the same way at the temporary, we discovered, you know, what the right model was for programming, and we're able to test some of our assumptions. We want to look at what are the opportunities in terms of outdoor programming and access. So for us, we want to preserve the opportunity to make sure we get it right. And so, yes, it is a bit of a question mark, but that's intentional because we want to make sure we do the right thing for the community in phase 2 and phase 3.
Okay. And then, so, you know, basically, the hardest part is if we're just gonna get questioned on the 6-foot fence and blocking public from what is considered pretty community-oriented piece. So, anyway, you can address that by second reading, and you don't have to go into detail, as I have.
I was just gonna say that we aren't approving the height of the fence, although their application had 6 feet in it. We have a condition that says, it's condition 14, and it says the height, material, and style of the fence shall be submitted to the TRC for approval before installation. So that's, we weren't envisioning that we were signing off on 6 feet. We want to work with the applicant more on this. I would say that what these conditions do, along with the amended condition that you see for 15, is kind of saying for that first 10-year period after CO, that they could, that's what this language says, they could fence it off, and then after that time period, the town could kind of revisit how that area is being used, including potentially removing the fence. They can ask for an extension of that time period, 2 5-year extensions on that. So that's what kind of the amended language does. And just to kind of emphasize what the amended language for 15 does, while I have the mic, is just kind of emphasizing that we are recognizing that the town council wants to use the entire parcel for the arts campus. It's just kind of this interim use if there isn't something built within a reasonable time frame for that back piece.
Well, I'm just going to weigh in with Gary in that I don't remember this discussion much about a fence. I didn't see fencing in the imagery because for what we have seen for 20 or 25 years there is fencing means construction site, and we make people fence construction sites. I guess my feelings about what this was going to be like was more open public, like the tent in Aspen, where people are welcome to come and be on that spot. And I'm disappointed that that would even be a consideration. I think our conversations with other folks in the past has been, if it's a phase type situation, you have it open until it's not open anymore, or unable to be open because it's a structure. So I would really, really ask if you would rethink this and open the doors a little bit to the public out at Willits, to have people invited onto the grass, or if nothing else, a little short, some kind of fence, because I think this is going to be a little bit of a slap in the face for the public out there, the neighborhood. It feels like it to me. Like I said, a 6-foot fence is a construction fence in my mind around a public building. If we put a 6-foot fence around this, it would turn people off big time. So
Well, that
that's the
would-
only thing I have. I mean, I really like the direction it's going. I love the inside. I love the uses. I love what's going to be attracted there. So just think about it.
Yeah, I think it's just important to note that, well, again, we want to do something that's tasteful and it makes the whole area inviting, but we want to activate the area that we know is the community is ready to activate and what we can sustain. I think on the back parcel, the backyard, as I referred to it, we view it as an area of discovery where we need to sort out what the next opportunity is. And if our concern is that if it is left up to the public to define in 10 years, a different council may have forgotten this conversation about the opportunity to have a multi-phase performing arts center and may just say, oh no, it should stay a park. And we need to find a way, working with all of you, to make sure that this opportunity gets preserved for the town, because this is really a once in a lifetime opportunity for the town. And as Michael said, it took us 20 years to get here. And who knows if there's another recession and we lose another 10 years. We don't want to put on artificial timelines. But we do want to do it tastefully, and we want to do it appropriately, and we certainly don't want to slap anybody in the face. So,
What is the deal? Isn't the whole thing leased by
Taka, right?
Taka? So, I mean, it wouldn't really matter in 10 years or 20 years if people didn't like it. It's your property.
Well,
It's your leased property. It's 100
you could
years.
change-
It's in paper, it's written
Right.
down as far as what the uses are and the allowable square feet, so it shouldn't need to be fenced off because you have a paper fence. This is a public property, it's being leased for public uses, and so therefore, I'm in agreement with Jackie and Gary, that a public space should be open to this public and not be fenced off. We're already dealing with other privatization of public space in Willits, and I don't want to see it to continue. The area between the affordable housing and the properties across from Linear Park, that was an open space and it's now been fenced off and locked. that's publicly owned and no, the public can't access it. And we should not continue on that pattern in Willits, especially in a very dense area of our town. We are we're a green space community, and the outdoors are important as well. So I'm as well. I did not see any of your renderings showing fenced-in areas. It's green, it's open, and that's how it should continue to be, is how I feel on it. And then I have some other comments. I'm wondering so I read in the agreement that TACA is responsible for snow removal of the parking areas, but who is responsible for the parking management?
That'll come out in the plan. We are requiring a parking management plan before a building permit, and we'll establish that. Keep in mind, this is public parking around here. None of this is privately owned except for the area that's covered by the Aspen Skiing Company approval. So, most likely, their management issues will be more like scheduling events, including information in their ticketing and their marketing and stuff like that.
Okay.
But it'll be a kind of a joint effort, but the parking itself is owned by us.
Okay. And so then within that, I see on the original plan, there's 59 spaces around, and now it's been reduced to 52 spaces. Is there Susan, is there a equation that is calculated for mandatory number of spaces?
The number of parking spaces for this plan was looked at in conjunction with the Charlier study. So Charlier had done this study, I want to say, in the end of 2017, where they concluded that TACA didn't have to have its own parking for the arts campus. And then that study was revisited by Charlier in this last year when they did the Aspen Skiing Company, and so they looked at the revised numbers. James, is there anything maybe I should add to that?
No, I think generally you're correct that TACA was studied as part of Charlier's study, and he said that there was sufficient parking in the overall PUD to accommodate what's developed.
So that's flexible, and we'll see what comes back.
You won't see anything because this is a final plan approval, and there's some potential, like a tweak potentially on Pioneer Street for like one more parking space, but you're not going to see any more parking spaces appreciably.
Reduction.
Yeah, or reduction, right?
Great,
Right.
that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to clarify. And then I'm wondering, what is the monetary amount for the reasonable fee for use? What do we currently pay at RMI? What's the going rate?
I can't answer that right now, of what our going rate is, but how we use at RMI is we kind of had a credit. They owed us money, and so we kind of had a debit account running with them. And when we talked it over with the representatives of TACA about the space and offering it free, it seemed reasonable that if they have staff there, they have audio-visual support, et cetera, that they can accommodate those charges to us. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that.
We did
you know.
the temporary, we did the town planning kickoff events, and we gave the town our nonprofit rate, that was $25 an hour at the temporary for one-off, rehearsal type events. And in context, the temporary, the commercial rate would have been $3,500 for the day. So I think it cost you guys like $100 to do that event. We view you as a partner, and we want to accommodate you for any event that is appropriate to do there. But we want to be able to make sure we can pay our contractors and our staff time and things like that.
Okay.
You good?
I also want to point out, we're not committing to that rate. that was the rate of the temporary. We'll do an assessment, but you have my assurance we view you as a partner, and we'll make sure that it's fair and reasonable.
Ethan?
Sure. I guess I'll take a modestly different approach and just say thank you guys very, very much for doing such fast work in the face of adversity. I mean, you never expected to be raising all of the money and breaking ground hopefully later this fall, but congratulations on a job well done. And, you know, thank you, Ryan and Mark and your whole great staff for demonstrating over 12 or 18 months that we can make Basalt a destination for arts and culture. And I look forward to seeing this kind of become the permanent. I also want to thank the board, frankly. You guys have invested an awful lot of time and money pro bono, and I think it's really tremendous that you're investing in Basalt. Reciprocally, I'm really proud that Basalt is investing in Takal. The town will make its voice heard in executing our strategic framework. Arts and culture are one of the very key pillars of how we will define and identify ourselves. And I'm glad that we have this partnership. And again, thank you guys for that. I guess the only thing that I look to too is the value that this space will provide in the first phase, in the second, and if we get to the third, to make Basalt a destination where people will come, they'll spend money, they'll spend time, they'll enjoy our community, and without any kind of extensive scientific proof, I know that the absence of the temporary is hurting our merchants, is hurting our restaurants right now. This is what I have heard from those where we have eaten, and so the sooner you can put people back in seats watching great music or culture or drama, the better. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Likewise, thank you. Awesome, very cool, very exciting. Seems like the fencing issue can be dealt with. It's an issue, but we have to manage land that is in abeyance. It can be figured out. You know, my comment is on, I think it's admirable to do a green building, and it's great you're working with Core and RMI. You'll probably get everything you need. There is a price premium to go from 80% to 100% net zero. I'm not going to be a stickler on that, and I'd prefer to see a 100% electric building than a net zero building, because you'll get there anyway. So just keep that as an option, and then, you know, I think recognize that level of flexibility and how much you're going to get. I think net zero is a little bit overplayed right now, especially on site, given what's happening on the grid.
Well, and given that Holy Cross is committed to going to renewables,
Right.
we're looking at that right now. What does it cost to go from 80% to 100%? What's interesting is there's specific challenges to a performing arts space that nobody's quite tackled. You put 500 people in a room and they dance, that's a lot of heat.
Right.
So we're working with RMI and Core to figure out, is it doable? The bigger, whether it's net zero or not, the biggest opportunity is putting sustainability, energy efficiency, and everyone doing their part front and center of our programming, front and center of the building, and make it a conversation. In our early conversations with those groups, they get so excited, as do we, because you look at what's happened at the project, the homes behind the school. Those are an incredible showcase, but someone lives there. You can't just walk a tour through and be like, oh, sorry, you're in your pajamas. I mean, someone lives there. We had 25,000 people go through the temporary in a year and a half. We're going to beat those numbers here. And all of those people are going to have this climate issue put front and center on their eyeballs, because that's a commitment we're making with them. So it's pretty exciting.
Right, yeah, the leverage is in the throughput. There's some in the building, but most of it's in who you access. Other quick point, this is right next door to Willett's Block 9, correct? Is it
Yes.
adjacent?
Yeah.
So just to think about, we're gonna build a building there, Aspen Skiing Company is, and we're exploring with Holy Cross a central heating plant that could potentially tie to yours and save you money.
Great.
And do it electrically. So it's at least worth a conversation with David Corbin to say, is this even on the radar? Could we pull it off?
That's great. We'll reach out right away, because we want to explore all those opportunities for both cost savings and efficiency. So thank you.
Ryan, did you have something?
No, Jen can go. I'll go.
I have a question of looking at this for the longer term and fundraising. Currently, you're named TACA, the Arts Center at Willits. And how does it go with naming rights of the buildings for finances? Will we be looking at the David Koch Center? Or just saying, money, that's, naming rights are very valuable. And what is our agreement on that? And what triggered that in my mind was reading through this packet stating that Takal will be the landlord into the future, and that made me imagine what could circle around that.
As I understand it, the town has leased the land to us for 99 years, and we would own the building, so we would retain the ability to offer naming rights. In all of our gift agreements that we do, we have language that says, should the organization or the donor act in a way that is inconsistent with the values of either party has the opportunity to end that naming right. So I think this is an instance, and I've seen this with other organizations, where the organization has to ask, is the value of that donor's money worth putting their name on an area or a building based on their status in the community or as a national player? So I've actually been in some pretty tough situations where we had to turn some money down from folks, not with this organization, with other organizations. It's always a question you ask, but I believe, and we can ask Jeff or Jody, the language states that we own the building, so we would retain the naming rights, but I can assure you, we're not going to, as an organization, put a name on any naming opportunity that we don't feel comfortable represents our values and who we are.
And thank you for keeping that in mind of it being a reflection of Basalt as well.
Of course.
We don't need the Weinstein Center.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think this is awesome. I'm so pumped that you guys are pushing forward and that we're all moving forward. I do comment too on the fence. It does seem a little disingenuous not to present the fence in your drawings.
We'll amend that.
I think there's probably something, I also agree with what you're saying with the fence, because you guys want to activate this area, so maybe you could think of some awesome temporary fence that's still, appeasing to the eye, can go up quick. You could do set posts or something to still be able to activate in that area, but also, if you're not activating that area, it would be nice to keep it public, because it looks like an awesome place to go hang out. So I would encourage you to kind of find that middle road, but I'm looking forward to this, and I think this is just awesome for the town. Wish you nothing but the best.
It sounds like everybody's pretty much weighed in I think a very positive way. Hope you heard it that way, because I think we're all super excited. I think you're thinking all the right things about climate and energy and all that. I personally would like to see this come back and see this fence thing figured out, because if it's a gut instinct for this many of us, and if Katie was here, it would be her as well, that means the community would have a feeling. I guarantee you, the community would have a feeling. So I would like to see it come back, if there would be a motion to bring this back to the next one.
And can I just add one thing to that comment? I think to Auden's point, this is a very solvable problem. We've got a great team here that can solve this problem. I think from our perspective, what's the most critical piece is that this council commits to this being all three phases in the future, now and forever. And as much as we can in solving the fence issue, also codify that this whole parcel is going to be the arts campus now and into the future. So we'll come back with what we think is a solution, but I also would love this board to commit to that long-term vision.
Well, and I think we will have our attorney walk through that when we come back too, because there's a lease there.
Right.
So, it's like if I rent a building, it's mine for that time frame. It's a contract.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, Jeff, and then.
There was some suggested language, this was just handed out.
Yeah.
That was not in the packet, that is a suggested edit related to the use of the backyard space. Susan, do you want me to get into that, or we can now, or should we?
Well, Sarah sort of got into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand it.
Yeah.
I'm not, I was thinking by the time you come back for second reading, just to update on that.
This is final, isn't it?
No, this is first reading. I felt like we could, my concern, I feel, can be
Okay.
dealt with, so I was okay with moving it to second reading.
Yeah, okay.
May I ask, just for some clarification, would council like to see some options, fenceless, temporary, like Brian has suggested, things like that? Or are you leaning in a certain direction?
My feeling is that I think that the applicant heard us loud and clear, that there's many of us who want to see something that either is temporary and allows access to the public most of the time, or allows access for the public most of the time. And if you have to put up a fence or a temporary tent or whatever you need to do to have, I understand that, that's fair as heck, but it is, you know, even though it's leased to a nonprofit, it is owned by the citizens of Basalt.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think what we would look for, and hopefully this would be okay with council, some sort of tasteful barrier, not at 6 feet, but at some, that could be opened up at the right times. But I think, again, we want to be able to explore the opportunities down there in the same way we explored opportunities at the temporary. And if we just make it a public space, we lose that opportunity, and I think that's a critical loss. So I think there's a balance.
Could you just explain that more? You repeat that, but I don't really understand
Well,
what you mean, explore the
So we've had tremendous success with the free concert series this summer, and we know we can program Lions Park and Triangle Park and Crown Mountain Park and Market Street. We're building Market Street, with proposals to put Market Street as a one-way street that can be used for special events. And that backyard space has potential to be something else. And we're not 100% clear. We want to understand what that's going to look like. But if it's just a public space without any kind of definition that says this is the future home of where we're going, I think it could slow down momentum towards phase 2, which is, I think, critically important for the town. But it would prevent us from, if we did have a private event back there, which is an opportunity, or kids programming. Like I see a kids summer camp where we take a group of kids outside to do Shakespeare under the trees or, you know, in the grass. And if it's open to the public, that could be a little bit more difficult. So I think for us, having some kind of way to define that space as this is the future development and this is
at least temporarily.
Temporary, yeah, and the idea of putting up
Yeah.
fencing between one event and another, we already do a lot of,
I'm okay with
each
that.
event is moving. You're okay with that,
Why
Gary?
don't, why don't we do kind of what Sarah's suggesting, maybe bring us a couple things to look at? But like I said, if it wasn't totally clear, I think it was.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I agree with what Ryan just said. What I was having a problem with is explaining it. And when you read it in here, and obviously it was 305 pages, so I might have missed some.
How dare you?
But, you know, the reality is when I really read through it, I'm just worried that, you know, it's gonna take time to develop this, it's gonna take time to go for phase 2 and phase 3. I'm completely committed for you guys to do phase 2 and phase 3. I just want a little more understanding and a little more aesthetic in what you're gonna do. And I feel if you could provide that by second reading, I'm
Great.
totally.
We've got the right team to do that, so.
Mayor, I would be pleased to move that the town council approve ordinance number 21, series of 2019 on first reading, and continue and set the public hearing and second reading to September 24th, 2019, subject to the very legitimate expressions of interests from council regarding the fence and the equally legitimate concerns about delineating a space for use for the community.
Along with the edits, understanding that we might be editing 15 again.
Subject to the edits of 15 again.
Okay.
Okay,
Second.
okay, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Okay. So our next item is 6E, a first reading of ordinance number 22, an ordinance of the town creating a special fund account for restricted revenue funds. Who is this, Susan?
Christy Hamrick.
Okay, there wasn't a name on here, I should have.
Oh, there was not a name. Okay, awesome. But everybody kind of shuffle out. Second.
It makes a huge difference.
Go ahead, Christy, try to
Okay.
speak again. Maybe other people will be quiet this time.
Fantastic. I'm sure they will be. It is money. This is the first of the recommendations the auditors had made for the town as part of our last 2018 audit that we're looking at implementing, which is moving to a 2 different fund structure versus 1 general fund, is that we would have, now they're crackling instead of talk.
Yeah, she makes all this deal about being quiet, and then she makes the most noise.
I can't believe that. That was impressive.
You tried, Jackie, it was fine. But is right now, the way the fund structure is that our general fund has kind of a commingled approach of a lot of our restricted funding that is not required legally to be in a separate fund, and our general operations. And so the reason why the auditors were looking at making this recommendation is so that you could split out your operations for more transparency and accountability and moving in that direction, so that you have more clarity and understanding as a council and as a community and even as a finance director, exactly how are your operations doing, revenue minus expenditures. Are you in the black? Are you in the red? Excluding all your restricted funding that has to be used for a specific purpose. So it's really good for planning, it's good for visioning, strategic planning, all those kind of things, to have that information at the ready at any given time, that we need it. And then it also gives you additional clarity around your restricted funding. So then it shows in any given audit year exactly what your restricted funding is for each one of those things, which we did do in the 2018 audit, but it adds even further clarity by having one additional fund. We're not looking at all these additional funds, a separate set of self-balancing accounts for each restricted fund, because that would just be impossible to do. We have over 20 of these restrictions. So we're just looking at moving those from the general fund into its own restriction for transparency and accountability, and then also because of our auditor's recommendation.
Makes sense.
Questions for this woman?
It's amazing that, you think like all government agencies have done this years ago, but they haven't. Picken County just did it a few years ago, so this is just something that just makes it clear and more transparent for finance directors who come in new and all of a sudden look at a big, huge thing of going,
What is this?
what is this?
Right.
So,
So
Like buckets.
you like buckets?
Yes.
I'm totally in favor of this.
Okay, is there a motion somewhere?
Well,
Not
you got a
yet.
question?
Again, Christie, do I understand now that we're gonna have two separate funds? We're gonna have two, whatever, a special account for general operating funds or general funds, and then for all restricted? Because I would ask, why are we stopping with only two, frankly? I think we can probably go further in promoting good governance, accountability, and transparency by further segregating within the restricteds among the larger of the funds that we have, water fund, bond fund, and then if you wanted to have all REITs, have those together as well. But I guess I also, from what you're just saying, I thought when we had spoke earlier, having the separate funds was also going to be accompanied by separate bank accounts. What is the state of bank accounts for each of these restricted funds?
So thank you, because I think that what we talked for like just 2 minutes, so that I think there was probably a lack of clarity about what we were talking about it as an account. Is it a bank account or is it a chart of accounts?
Right.
So what I was referring to is chart of accounts, because right now, the answer to your question is that if we were to further separate these out, it would really put a strain on the two staff that we have right now, myself and another accountant, to really manage that amount of work and separating out all these different funds. I think a more efficient approach would be to make sure within the restrictions that you as council and as the community would still be able to know, for example, the post balance, as we reconcile that. Hopefully, the plan would be quarterly or, at least biannually, and still have those carryover balances available to you within that restricted, fund, if you will.
Right.
But without separate bank accounts, because then it becomes very challenging, because right now, I don't believe we have the staff to be able to manage reconciling that monthly, which is what would be required. That's the answer.
Good point. We
Yes,
can get
Brian.
there sometime.
One other quick clarification for you, Bill. You mentioned in the restricted funds, the water fund, the bond fund.
Yes.
Those are already separate, so those won't be, lumped into this
Okay.
separate restricted account. So we'd have the restricted fund, the general fund, the water fund, the bond fund, and the
Okay.
conservation trust fund.
See, this was why this was a little bit confusing, because I had thought that we had segregated some of these funds.
Yes, we did, yeah.
So the special funds we're talking about now creating the special account for would be things like all of the RETAs, the lodging tax, trying to think
Post.
of what else, post.
Yeah, your cigarette tax is another good example. All the things, and sorry for that lack of clarity, but all the things in the general fund, we're trying to separate out, so that, all the things that are already separated out
Yeah,
are gonna stay the same, which is what Ryan had mentioned.
yeah.
Yes, if you're finished,
I was
Bill.
only just gonna say thank you again for shouldering this incredible amount of work to sort out what has obviously been a long-standing issue.
Oh.
So, great work.
Counselor Schindler.
Mayor, I move that town council approve ordinance number 22, series of 2019 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for September 24th, 2019.
Second.
Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry.
There's one issue that, just one minor words, couple minor wordsmithing things that, I'll bring back on second reading in relation to the interest that's generated from the funds in the restricted revenue fund. Just noting it for the record now, but we'll bring back the specific language for second reading.
Great. Thank you. So I think we had a motion and a second, and that was the further discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great. Thanks. Thank you, Christie.
You bet.
Okay, so now we're getting to the really exciting things about street sweepers. Resolution 35, a resolution of the town approving an equipment lease purchase agreement with NBH Bank for a street sweeper. Ryan Mahoney.
Yeah, this is pretty straightforward. We've, basically looking at a lease agreement, which is something that we have done on some other equipment, just given that initial cost on this piece, which is about $265,000. You take it off in bite-sized chunks each year. We have a bank, Community Banks of Colorado, that would be doing that lease purchase for us, and we take possession of that new machine, which is much quieter than the machine we have now. We've heard feedback, and our one particular resident that's particularly annoyed by it, we intend to bring it to his house first thing and
Maybe give
give
him
him
a
a
ride.
ride. Yes, so I think he'll enjoy that.
I love it.
But that in essence is what we're doing. I think in discussions with the bank, we may have some minor tweaks, but it's contemplated in here that Christie and I are able to do that at the direction of the town attorney. So,
Okay.
did you guys have anything to add? No.
No, that's good.
Any questions about street sweepers, or is there a motion?
Mayor, I move the town council adopt resolution number 35, series of 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm sorry, Bill.
Can I get a
I
ride
didn't give you a
in that
chance.
thing?
Nope, that was,
Okay.
I was just eyeing.
Okay, next and last, resolution 36, a resolution of the town declaring surplus property for sale or disposal. This must be
This is
Bill,
me
you.
again, yeah. So, we have our existing piece of equipment that's approximately 5 years old, and, as part of our capital improvements, fleet replacement program, this piece of equipment in particular, we keep them for about 5 years. They have lots of different vacuum systems on them and whatnot that start to, or can start to go down. So, we would like to, go ahead and sell it. We have a standing offer from the company we, bought it, from, and it's a fair price, so we'd like to move ahead with getting rid of it.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt resolution number 36, series of 2019.
Second.
I have a comment.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you were young and aspirational and thinking about your life, did you ever think that you would sell street sweepers for a living?
Don't answer that, don't.
I thought maybe I'd drive them for a living.
Just vacuums.
That would be fun. Driving would be fun. We do have a motion in a second, right? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody.
I have a quick question
Yes, sir.
under information and correspondence, accounts payable. Chrissy, what is Cadfish LLC?
That is the person, sorry, can I jump
Yes.
in? We get help from, it's an individual, but that's the name of this company, to do plan review,
Oh,
for,
okay,
for all of our building permits.
okay.
So,
And then that's billed back to the applicants?
No,
No.
no,
Okay.
so we get a fee from them, and then we have an arrangement, a contract with this person, and they take a percentage. And so we keep,
Okay.
some of it for overhead administration, and then he keeps a percentage in there. And those percentages are, you know, we negotiated those pretty tediously, and kind of did some research on what the going costs are. We had a previous contract, and I think we improved on that even a little bit with Safe Built. And this person, he does a great job for us. So.
Beautiful.
I went
Thank you
back
for
on that
clarifying.
If there's no further business, we are adjourned.
Good job.
Yeah.
Hey, we did pretty good.